Charles Oliveira is one of the most feared submission artists in the UFC and holds the most submissions in UFC history. Following his fight with Islam Makhachev, I've seen a lot of people backtrack on their opinions about him, denying his dominance and talent in the sport. Here, we're going to go back to the beginning to see what really started his insane win streak running through the lightweight division. First of all, I want to say everything that I talk about in this video is purely hypothetical, and although I am looking through real studies to back up what I'm talking about, it doesn't mean that any of them have been proven. Most of the studies have not been replicated, so there's not really a for sure indication that everything's correct. And as you've probably heard before, correlation does not mean causation, and what that basically means is that if there's like a link found between two relationships, it doesn't mean that one caused the other. Charles Oliveira is an interesting case because he didn't have the best win streak with an 11-8 record and one no contest until starting an 11 win streak record, finally being beat by Islam Makhachev. But how did this win streak start? What changed that caused him to pick up this crazy momentum, solidifying him as one of the best MMA fighters in the lightweight division and holding the most submissions in UFC history?
You never know. The thing about Oliveira is everybody looks at Oliveira at his lowest points. And his lowest points, Cub Swanson knocked him out, Paul Felder smashed him, all these people beat him, but something happened when that dude had a kid. That's what it is. That dude had a daughter. And there's a fire inside of him like the fucking center of the sun. And I don't know what it is, man, but he's a different human, man. He goes right into the line of fire, too.
Straight.
He's not taking any shortcuts. It's all risk. He goes right in, and he's 100% confident. It doesn't matter how hard you hit him, he's going to be fine.
All respect to Islam for winning the fight and dominating the way he did, but we're going to focus on how Oliveira ran through the rest of the competition before facing Islam and after having a daughter. You might be wondering, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Why is Child given new inspiration and motivation to put his all into his craft? And you'd be right. But let me tell you why you shouldn't always assume having a child would have that effect. So Oliveira, right after having a kid, something changed inside of him. It's a hard concept to describe, but when people become fathers, they have to make huge changes in their prioritizations and have to look at the world in a completely different way in order to adapt and protect their newborn. And in this case, it might have been the factor that influenced them into becoming a dominator in the lightweight division and one of the most feared submission artists in the UFC. But now, as this is a case study on him, we can't really generalize it to every single person, and it would be really easy for me to say that having a baby is what's caused him to start winning and to build up such a huge win streak. But to establish it as a causation claim, we have to check off three things. So the first one is covariance of cause and effect. So that needs to have two variables that have an obvious link together. So it's clear in this case that the baby has a link with when he started with the win streak. So the second one is temporal precedence. So this is when the variable that caused the other variable happens before the effect. So in this case, it's also true that having the baby was before the win streak happened. So 2 out of 3 is already checked. But this is one of the third one, we can't really check that one off, is internal validity. So internal validity is basically, they can't be a different variable that would affect the effect. So they can't be like a third variable that causes the win streak to happen. And in this scenario, it's definitely possible that was like a third variable to affect the win streak. Like, for example, he was possible he just started training harder, he got a different coach, a better coach, he put in more work, he had a better diet. There's like so many different variables other than him having a child that could have caused it to happen. So because of this box that we can't check off out of the 3 different things, we can't say it's a causation claim. We can just say there's like a link between the two. There's no way to really know if the babies will cause them to start winning. So we found that Oliveira having a child might have been the cause of the streak, but what does testosterone have to do with any of that? In many animal species, there are hierarchies of power that lead to some or more of the dominant males getting the breeding power in their communities. This is seen in primates, wolves, and even chickens. Many studies have shown that animals at the top of this dominance hierarchy also produce the higher levels of testosterone. You can see the real effect of testosterone in people who participate in Mr. Olympias, which is like a bodybuilding competition where they take enhancing drugs to boost their T levels to put on more muscle mass faster and more efficiently. Many different studies were conducted by different psychologists and scientists that tested hormonal differences in fighters before and after the fights, which showed that the winners of the fights had higher testosterone levels after the fights than the losers of the same fight. Other studies, though, found that there was no correlation between testosterone and fight outcome. The difference from these studies, the ones that have no correlation, and the one I'm about to show you, is that these previous studies were done on jiu-jitsu and judo athletes. So we know that testosterone levels of primates is linked to the competition aspect of finding a partner. Humans are also primates, and biologically we have similarities that work in somewhat similar ways. Obviously, we're much more intricate than gorillas and apes in that we have more complex social circles and psychological systems that work in much more different ways than they do for apes and gorillas and things like that, other primates. So when someone has a child, they typically lose the urge and the biological need to take risks, which comes in like many different forms. One of which is you lose the competitiveness to go against other males to find somebody to breed with. So males typically, once they have their first child, their testosterone levels drop about 30%, as compared to the people the same age would only drop 12 to 15%. Knowing all this information, you might be wondering what the link is between testosterone and why it even matters that the levels go down when you have a child, and why what Oliveira did was so impressive given all the factors at hand. Now we're going to look at a study that was conducted, which involved MMA fighters and their testosterone levels before and after their fights to see its effect on performance. This study involved 20 MMA athletes who had at least 6 years of training on them and 3 professional fights. They took testosterone or T samples, cortisol samples, and many more different tests before and after the fights, but we're just going to focus on the testosterone levels. They took these samples 24 hours before the fight, an hour before, 0 hours before, so right before they fought, and then also one more time 24 hours after the fight. What they found is that the winners of the fights had on average higher levels of testosterone before and after the fights compared to the losers. Now again, this doesn't prove anything, but it can indicate that with higher intensity training, testosterone response is more effective when there's more physical effort being put out. In the study, they say that one of the reasons they may have gotten different results than the previous studies, which we mentioned before, that did not find any correlation, was because those studies had chosen judo and jiu-jitsu as their fighting styles. And while those sports are also very competitive and very hard to master, MMA involves all of them, plus kicks, punches, elbows, knees, and much more that go into play, which always exert more testosterone than standard wrestling or other things like that. So we found some links between testosterone and the results of a fight. Hypothetically, if we assume this study had no faults regarding its validity and its reliability, this would make Oliveira's win streak seem even crazier, given he was at his all-time lowest levels of testosterone. He not only stopped losing after dropping a significant amount of testosterone levels, but starting winning against all odds and dominantly with pure force of will. This kind of shows you that the obstacles you'll run into in your life and how you overcome them is all in your head, and the difference of how you react to them is what decides the way you go.